Behold, a giant am I. Aloft here in my tower, with my granite jaws I devour the maize and the wheat and the rye, and grind them into flour.
Originally built on a single-storey roundhouse, this windmill is of a type known as a post mill, so named because the whole structure rotates on top of a substantial oak post. Consisting of a ground floor roundhouse, above is the trestle floor. The trestle consists of two large cross timbers known as cross trees, supported at each end by piers. 4 quarter bars rise from the ends of the cross trees and meet at the post just below the mill floor. These quarter bars take the full weight of the mill. The post passes through the mill floor into the crown tree above. The crown tree is positioned across the mill and the whole mill body turns on this point. The base of the main body of the mill is known as the meal floor, where sacks would have been filled with ground flour. Above this, the stone floor, where the millstones are situated. Originally, the mill had 2 sets of stones, each set made up of an upper runner stone positioned over a fixed bedstone. At the front or head of the mill were Derbyshire peak stones. Used for producing wholemeal flours, each were made of a single piece of rock quarried in the Peak District. In the back or tail of the mill were French burr stones, used for making white flour. Wind power was converted to stone power with this huge wind shaft fitted with a front brake wheel directing drive to the rear tail wheel. Drive shafts would have then powered the stone sets. At the top of the windmill is the bin floor. At this level, the miller would raise the sacks of grain and fill grain bins to provide a constant supply to the stones below. Powered by large sweeps or sails, the windmill was designed to work facing the wind, as this provided constant drive to the mill's machinery. When the wind changed direction, the miller would manually rotate the entire top section using the tail pole as a giant lever. This would have taken some effort, as the weight of the upper building is more than 33 tons. 1851, and nearby building work threatens the efficient wind operation of the mill, so Edward Beanie took radical action. The entire windmill was raised by increasing the height of its brick piers, a dedicated task as it would have been moved brick by brick. This lifted the height of the sweeps and ensured they could still catch the wind. By 1987 it was on the verge of collapse, with extensive decay of floors and timbers, although miraculously it survived the October hurricane of that year, which caused the destruction of several other mills. 1994, and the mill is rescued by Paul and Beatrice Frost, who decide to halt the decay of this unique building. With the help of Wealdon District Council, the new owners constructed a steel supporting frame to prevent the structure from collapse and removed the remaining rusty metal cladding. The tail end of the mill was also protected with plywood sheeting to prevent further deterioration, but temporary measures were not going to extend the life of the mill. In 2001, the Heritage Lottery Fund awarded a grant of £577,000 towards the total cost of £770,000 for the restoration of the mill. At the time, this was their biggest ever grant for the restoration of an individual windmill. In 2003, work on site commenced, but before the first piece of timber could be removed, it was necessary to number every stud, floor joist and rafter to ensure it could be put back in the right place. This task took 2 weeks to complete. Preparations were then made for the big lift, with a 65-ton mobile crane positioned. The first section removed, the roof lifted in one piece. Next, the mill's iron windshaft with brake and tail wheel in place. With the main body of the mill dismantled, all that remained at Windmill Hill was the roundhouse with its central post. The roof and windshaft, together with remaining timbers, were transported to specialist millwrights in Oxfordshire. Many of the unique timber sections were sympathetically repaired to ensure as much of the old survived. The crown tree, the main timber which pivots on the post and carries the weight of the body, had suffered from death watch beetle infestation. Much of its core had to be removed and new planks of oak were glued together to replace the centre, which was rotten. Much of the studding between the main timbers was in good condition, but the ends of many had been weakened by rot. These were repaired by removing the damaged material and replacing the ends with new timber. September 2004, and the big lift is underway. Despite delays due to adverse weather, the mill body is lifted higher over the scaffolding and carefully lowered onto the main post. Next, the millstones are slowly positioned. Weighing in at 1.5 tons, the windshaft, now with its new brake wheel, is gently manoeuvred into place. Finally, the roof, once again reunited with the body of the mill. A crane lifted 2 immense stocks into the canister at the end of the windshaft. The 4 new sweeps were then manually hauled into position with the help of a winch. Instruments on the roof of the mill sense the speed and direction of the wind, and an automatic turning device enables the mill to turn and face the prevailing wind at all times. Battery-powered motors attached to the bottom of the tail ladder are recharged directly from the mains electricity supply. In 2006, with the structure of the mill restored, complete with a skeleton set of sweeps, it was open to the public for the very first time. The following year, general fundraising began, and a grant was obtained to fund new tons for the millstones. Next, a detailed machinery survey commenced to establish the full extent of restoration work necessary. This would take 4 years to complete, as each component of the mill's machinery had to be closely examined. July 2013, and a formal submission is sent to the Heritage Lottery Fund, and in November the following year the trustees finally received word that their second application to fund the final phase of restoration had been successful. February 2015, and on a wet and dreary day, a mobile crane and cherry picker are at Windmill Hill to remove the mill's stocks and sweeps. Once loaded onto a lorry, they will be transported to Burgess Hill, where a full restoration and repair will be carried out. New shutters will also be made, enabling the sweeps to become fully operational. On the bin floor, the 2 grain bins are being rebuilt, as the original bins had completely rotted away, and with new flooring, repairs to the gallows and recogging of the mill's sack hoist drive, Douglas will make many more trips up and down to the bin floor over the coming months. April 2015, and new steel bands are being fitted to the French burrstones to replace the original bands that had rusted away. Unlike their peakstone counterparts, French burrstones are made up of a number of distinct pieces of stone bound together. These bands prevent the stones from breaking up under pressure during milling. A wheelwright's traveller measuring tool is used to measure the circumference of the band before heating it with gas torches. When heated, the band expands in size until it is just large enough to drop into place. Depth gauges allow the band to be correctly positioned around the stone. As the band cools, it tightens around the stone, at which point the now redundant depth gauges are cut off and the job is complete. But these millstones have not been in use since 1913, so before they can be gainfully employed, they must first be dressed. A proving staff is used to establish the flatness of the stone. Millstone dressing is an important aspect of routine maintenance carried out in a mill. Malcolm skillfully smooths the surface of the stone and recuts the pattern of grooves or furrows. These furrows do the real work of grinding grain into flour. Some school children are on a field trip to Windmill Hill to learn about the historic importance of their local Sussex post mill. It's August, and 188 new shutters have been built, painted, and are being attached to the whips on each of the 4 sweeps. Each wooden shutter is fitted with a hinge pin at one end and hinge pin and a crank arm at the other. The shutters are assembled into a whip, and each of the shutter crank arms are linked together with a single sail bar, which moves radially in and out to open and close all the shutters in that whip simultaneously. A cold and drizzly October morning, and the mobile crane with arm fully extended waits for the signal. Another big lift is about to take place. The first of the 2 giant stocks, each bearing a single whip, is lifted into the air. The stock is carefully positioned, then slowly lowered into the canister and fixed securely. The second whip is then attached. The process is repeated when hanging the second stock. Finally, the mill is reunited with its now fully operational sweeps. Since the early part of the last century, this windmill stood neglected and slowly decaying. Now a Grade 2 star listed building, its recovery has been the most technically challenging windmill restoration project ever carried out in the United Kingdom.
We knew when we bought the house that we were taking on the mill as well, but we didn't realise that the restoration of the windmill was going to become such a huge part of our lives. The mill was completely derelict, so it was a real challenge. Fortunately, we've had fantastic support from our volunteers right from the start. Local people told us that they'd been hoping for many years that someone would restore the mill, but it had stood derelict for so long that they thought it would never happen. Now Windmill Hill has its windmill back again. It seems amazing that £1 million has gone into this restoration. That's more than we ever imagined. And it's 20 years since we started, and that's a lot longer than we thought. Now we've reached the final stage, grinding corn into flour by wind power for the first time in 120 years.
Created in the 19th century and restored in the 21st, this unique building now has a past, a present, and a future.